Hi, my name is Britt Gilman and I'm the Research Project Analyst at the Deep River Public Library. Since 2022, the Deep River Library and partners have been co-leading this local history project titled Not Born from a Virgin Forest, Deep River and Area's Earliest History. The title of this project is derived from early recorded accounts of Virginia Adams Hunt, who proposed that the area that we now call Deep River had housed families for decades prior to the arrival of the town, and therefore Deep River was not born from a virgin forest. This project was started in response to requests to expand understanding of life in our area prior to 1945. I'd like to thank our partners, the Schoolhouse Museum, the Laurentian Hills Library, Professor Stephanie Adams, Alex Stevens of Deep Tech, the Deep River District Community Foundation, and to the New Horizons for Seniors grant, who generously funded this project and made our work possible. The following oral history that you're about to watch is a subjective first-person account, an individual recording of life in the early days of Deep River and area. We hope that by asking questions and capturing responses, we're able to add these oral histories to our collection of historical accounts to expand understanding. Enjoy. Is there anything that you can tell me about this?
About this?
Mm-hmm.
Well, my sister, this is just a photocopy of the original, right? This is the envelope that come in. But she made this for the Centennial, Heather, you made? Auntie Jane made this with a thing just so that people could read about it, my grandparents. And my dad and us.
Right there.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Is that your mom's mom or your dad's parents?
That's Daddy's mom. That's the first settler.
Okay.
And
down here I see the name Annie.
that's my older sister, Annie
Yes.
Jane. Yeah. And Clara. That's me. And Ida. That's the baby.
Right. And it's titled The First Settler.
She did a good job of writing that up, eh?
Wonderful. Earlier this morning, we were talking about how your family are wonderful storytellers.
Oh,
And you mentioned that you were a little bit more quiet compared to some of the other family members.
Yeah, I'm the listener.
You're the listener.
But of course, I'm the only one left too, so I have to be the speaker too.
Of course, yes. I think that with all stories, it's really nice to start at the beginning.
Okay.
So looking back, I'd love to know, who were your grandparents, and can you tell me about them?
Well, I don't remember them. All I can remember is when my grandmother was dying, they had brought her bed from downstairs into the kitchen, living room, dining room, and that's where she was. And we were all at the foot of the bed crying because Grandma was dying. And my younger sister was crying. She didn't know why. Because I just remember kneeling there while the adults prayed. And that my grandfather, I didn't know. He died before I was born. But that's him there, and my grandma.
Do you know how your grandparents met?
No, I don't. I really, honest to God, I know Grandpa came from Lake of Two Mountains, near Ottawa. Would that be Oka? Lake of Two Mountains?
Okay.
Ottawa?
Okay, that sounds familiar.
Sailed up, canoed up this way.
Okay.
Now I don't know if Grandma was with him. I have no idea. Honest to God, I don't know. I never thought to ask.
Okay. What do you remember about your parents? And is there any stories that you can tell me about your parents?
My parents? Oh, well, Mom and Dad. Dad was if you read in the envelope there, he was a river driver, drove the logs down from the Cheyenne, if they get stuck. And if they're locked up, he would unlock them on the river driver. And he trapped, I guess, in the winter. And fished. We lived right down there, and Mom, well, she had cows and pigs and chickens, so she milked the cows and I guess supplied everybody with milk and eggs and butter. I guess.
Has to come from
Because she
somewhere.
was the only
doesn't
one who had cows.
it?
And everybody seemed to have milk and butter.
That's wonderful. So it looks like here we have a photo of Mr. Moses Lemure and Mrs. Moses Lemure and grandchildren. And there's a dog right here pulling on a sled.
That's how we went to school.
That's how you went to school.
Yeah, on the cold wintry nights, wintry days, she had 3 dogs. This is when my kids were little, but when I was little, we had 3 dogs: Fanny, Jip, and Bouncer. And she would put the 3 of them on a sleigh and take us to school, and then come and get us at night. Yes. Didn't have to walk very far. Mm-hmm. And this here was just those old dogs died, and this she had with. You could tell the dog wasn't very happy being tied up in that harness. And there's my dad on that, whatever kind of buggy that was. Mm. Valley of history. It's just a lot of
memories.
Yes, yes.
Okay, so I see a document here that says the Canadian Overseas Expeditionary Forces Certificate of Conditional Leave of Absence without pay for Private Moses Lemure. This was dated on the 11th of May in 1918. And it says that a conditional leave has been granted of absence without pay for one of the grounds given below. And I'm reading here, it says, being an Indian. Yeah. Is there anything you'd like to say on that?
No. It wasn't his fault, it was an Indian. You know, he fight just as good as anybody else. To my knowledge, anyways. I think he would have. Maybe he's better off just playing the violin and not going to war. Gave a lot of people a lot of joy.
Do you know the story of how your parents came to the area?
Well, my mother was born in Quebec. Heather, do you remember the name? Mountains. My grandfather logged and farmed. There was 13 in my mother's family, and my dad, I guess, was guiding for the. I guess Grandpa must have had some kind of a place where people could come and fish and stay in camp, I guess, or something. Okay. And Dad would guide them, like, you know, he was a guide. And I guess that's where he met my mother. So he would, the odd time I hear, I don't know if it's true or not, he swam across the Ottawa River to go see her.
Oh, young love.
No, I don't know where that would be. We often tried to figure it out. Would it be this way from, you know, just down here, or would it be Petawawa or where? But, or if it's even true, like, you know, Daddy never swore to that, but as the story goes. And then, of course, he would have to walk up the mountain to where, what was the name of that little place, Heather?
Lake of Two Mountains?
No, that's Ottawa. Oh. That's where Grandpa came from. This is Granny Chartres. She was a Chartres from Nazaire. Chartres was her father. Maybe somebody knows of the Chartres. From there was 13 of them anyways, and the girls did the farming and the boys did the logging.
Wow. Families were very big back then.
Yes. I don't really, honest to God, know how many there was in Daddy's family, but there was only my Aunt Sis and Dad and Uncle Maxime my Aunt Sis is, I have a picture of her there in the thing. Her and Daddy were the only ones that I remember, you know, that I grew up with.
In your family, how many siblings did you have growing up?
Three girls.
Okay.
Annie was the oldest, then me, and then Ida, the baby.
Ida was the baby, yes. Do you have any stories that come to mind first when you think about your siblings growing up?
Well, my older sister was a nurse. She went to Ottawa and taught, she was, what were they called? RNA, Registered Nurse's Assistant. Yeah, she worked in Ottawa, worked in Pembroke, and worked in the deep for a little bit. But she couldn't handle working in this hospital here because she knew too many people, and the elderly were dying, and she had to quit. She was a good nurse too. Very gentle, cranky sometimes. When she had her her little son, he was the apple of her eye, and he couldn't do no wrong, if you know what I mean. This one and him were kind of little troublemakers.
When your sister was younger, did she ever talk about wanting to grow up and be a nurse or care for anyone?
When Annie was younger, no. Actually, she went to school in Pembroke. She had to go to Pembroke to further her education. Now, what was that? I don't know if it was, yes, because they had the black uniform with the tight collars. What would that be? God, my memory is so bad. And she was the only one that did something. My younger sister and I got married and had babies.
Which is also a very important job.
Yes, it was, yes, very important and very busy.
Yes. Thinking back to when you were growing up, you're mentioning healthcare and you're mentioning babies. Something that we've been wondering is what healthcare looked like in the time. Do you remember any babies being born or?
Oh, well, I can remember one time, they were all born at home, I guess, because my mom said to us two, I guess I don't know where Auntie Ida, where my sister was, but the two of us, she said, you sit in this window, and the window was looking down that way, where my Aunt Vic and Uncle Joe lived, and Aunt Vic was delivering a baby, and she said, and I don't know how she knew, but she said, you look down that, he said, and watch the sky, you'll see a little angel flying up into heaven. And Vic's baby had died, I guess during birth.
Okay.
And that's what Mom said, watch, you'll see the little angel going to heaven. And that's all I remember about babies being born.
Certainly.
I was born there with my grandmother. Mom's mom was a midwife. I was born at home. Okay. I think my sister was the only one, my older sister was the only one delivered in a hospital in Pembroke, and I don't know how come of that. I don't know how come that was.
Okay.
And I don't know how wide I think I was hatched.
Did you say hatched?
I don't remember her being God rest her soul. She's going to come down and haunt me. Oh yes, my mother made her own furniture, chairs, rocking chair. I have a high chair that she made for my firstborn. I still have it at home.
You still have it?
I'm hanging on to it, like, you know, I have great grandchildren that can sit in it when they come, but I have it upstairs. It's there, handmade by my mother.
That's a special keepsake.
With the little tray in it, yeah. But every chair, a rocking, I can remember walking with her through the bush, and it had to be, it was a maple or birch, but she would look, find something with the wow for the rocking chair. It had to be a perfect, and she would cut it and make sure that there'd be enough for the two rockers. Because she said if you didn't do that, it would wear out too fast, like, you know, being not natural. So there's, I don't know where they went. I think the house got sold and the chairs went with them. Much to my dismay.
That's a very special memory.
Well, all I know is they're not going to get the high chair. It's going to stay in the family.
More babies have to be put into that high chair.
Yes.
You have a new grandbaby.
Two great granddaughters.
Okay.
What's the name?
What are their names?
Oh, and one is named after me, Clara.
Clara.
Now there's two of us in Deep River. Two Claras.
And the other name?
Violet.
Violet.
Terry, Cindy's son's wife had a little baby girl. Their third child, named it Violet. There was Davy. What's the name of the oldest?
Delilah.
Delilah, Davy, and Violet.
Those are beautiful names.
And Andrew's, that's Neil's son, has a little girl. It's Sasha, named Clara. Both, what, 6 months old? About 6 months old, both of them. So cute.
So when we're thinking about what was called the Wiley Hamlet back then and growing up in this area, do you remember what your childhood was like or what your days might have been like?
Well, all I know is we went and we played at Aunt Vic's. The kids came and played at our places. We were not to go to the river because neither my mom nor my aunt could swim. Daddy could swim like a fish. Of course, he never taught us. But anyway, we were not to go to the river unless there was adults there with us. So we could go puddle around in the puddle in front of the rocks. But that was it. Like, you know, it was just very simple. You weeded the garden with Mum when she asked you to. You know, went picking blueberries. Picture Aunt Vic and her 2 kids, 3 kids, and Mum and hers. We would go picking blueberries up by the Legion up that way.
Were you making some pies together then with those blueberries?
Well, no, Mum preserved them.
Oh.
Well, I suppose she didn't make a pie, but there was always preserves for jam. You know, jam and homemade bread. Mm. Yes. No, we never. The only learned to bake was when we had to move up to the Wiley. And Mum had her bread boxes, which you put a 50-pound bag of flour in and you mixed your bread, and it was just fantastic.
How do you remember the village being laid out at the Wiley Hamlet? You're mentioning going to each other's houses and the kids would go from each house to play.
Oh.
When you look at it now, what did it look like back then in comparison?
Part of our house was sand. I think the kitchen under the stove was sand. And then there was, I can't remember there being a living room, but there was 2 bedrooms facing that way. 2 steps going up. And Mum and Dad's bed and the girls' bed. And Aunt Vic's house, of course, she had upstairs because she had more kids than Mum. She had upstairs. We weren't allowed to go up there because she was afraid we would fall. And Aunt Vic was a cripple. She wasn't a cripple. She was just, her hands, one hand was like this. And one little foot. She had one little foot. So she could walk and she could bake. She could do anything, change babies with that little hand. But we'd go then, we'd play there, and she was cranky too. If we misbehaved, yeah, we got a little thwack on the back of the head, or on the butt, whichever was handy first.
I'm wondering about school as well. What was education like in your family growing up? Did you go to school, or where did most of your learning experience?
No, well, my sister was taught at home English as best she could because my mother was French and spoke to her French, so when she went to school, all she understood was French. So I think Mum said up to grade 3. I guess Mum was learning at the same time English, you know, teaching her English. So grade 3, there was a school. I went to school. There was a school on the Wiley Road, and that's where we left. Of course, we could walk down. That was just only 2 miles to school. But Annie had lived here, and she had to walk up to that school. Trying to remember if there was a school around here, but I can't remember. I'm sorry, I just can't remember. But I know she was took English school at home till grade 3.
And you mentioned French language as well as English was spoken. Were there any other languages spoken in your family?
Daddy was fluent in Indian, but he never taught us. And my Aunt Sid, I think all she taught us was bad words. Because she would tell us a word when we say it, she would laugh. So I thought, I'd ask Mom, and Dad's eyebrows would get all like this, and he wouldn't laugh. And Mom didn't know any Indian, so she said, I don't know what it means. And she was fat, jolly lady. Her belly would be shaking, laughing at us when we said it. Oh.
That's definitely one way to learn a language.
But her and Daddy would speak Indian when they were together. They never taught us words. Pequejigan was bread, I know that. And Nibishawabu, I'm not sure about what that is, or whether that's good or bad. But I don't know if it's tea and milk or Nibishawa. I'd have to ask. Somebody knows. I know somebody knows what that means.
So that language ended sort of, you would say, with your parents, and from then on you were learning English at school, moving forward.
Yes. And then Mom never taught me. Well, when her and her sisters got together, French people talk really fast, and I could catch a word, I could understand some of it, get the drift of what they were talking about, but I could never carry a conversation with them. Oh my goodness sakes alive. Those French ladies could really talk fast. It's kind of neat to listen to them. And of course the hands are going too. They say French talk with their hands as much as their mouth. But anyways, Daddy and Sis were the only ones that oh no, wait a minute, maybe Uncle Dave and Aunt Mary. I think Aunt Mary could speak Indian. But Uncle Dave is not really my uncle, he's my first cousin. Because his father was what was his name? Ben Adams Lucas was Uncle Joe and Uncle Dave's father, but Ben Adams Lucas married my dad's sister.
Okay.
So he was my uncle. He was their grandfather, or their father. It's very confusing when you're trying to tell Stephanie and Henry that, and they get so confused. No, Henry, you're wrong.
I'm wondering what social life was like growing
Along the
up.
river?
Yes.
Oh my goodness! Well, I can't remember Daddy's violin player, so he was invited to all the house parties because he played the violin. But I can't remember. I can remember going to a party up at Rathwell's house because they had a big house. But we were allowed to sit on the staircase and watch them people dance. And there was another place we went to if there was a house party. Mom got to take us. Rathwell's house, maybe? Mm-hmm. Rathwell's house.
We had heard that there were some really wonderful parties at the Rathwell house.
Yeah, and maybe the Hogue's house way back, maybe the old farmhouse, because I know there were parties and Daddy was always invited. Well, he was always when he played the violin, and then later on the parties used to be at my house because my sister played the piano, and Daddy played the violin. So there was lots and lots of parties and lots of dancing, and square dancing and round dancing. I was 13 when my dad taught me to dance. Square dancing, round dance, waltz. Couldn't jive though. Couldn't jive. Didn't know what my sister could. I think her husband taught her how to do that. My husband had 2 left feet, so he couldn't jive. I had problems teaching him to waltz.
It's a difficult one, the waltz.
Yes, it is. It is. Well, round dancing and waltzing, and the slow ones he got, hands down, but he had 2 left feet. Of course, he was funny. He'd be dancing with me, but watching other people's feet, and he'd be dancing all over my feet. I would have to tell Jimmy, you're dancing with me. Don't be looking at their feet.
That's a
Oh,
beautiful
dear.
memory.
My dad taught me to dance, and he said, put your hand on the man's shoulder. And you know what his feet are going to do by the way his shoulders move.
Oh,
And it's true.
that's the trick.
And
I'm going to
it's
have
true.
to save that one.
Yeah. And it's true because if you would look at their feet, you're all over. You know, but but you get the dancers who don't move. You know, they just move their feet. My cousin Gibby, that's what he was like. And I said, Gibby, loosen up. I don't know what you're doing with your feet. I said, come on, loosen up. Move your shoulders. And pretty soon he was getting it, and I knew what he was doing with his feet then. It was great growing up. But that's after we were married, you know. Before, maybe the bucket of blood. I can remember my cousins and George Adams. He had a car, so he would take, Mom wouldn't let us girls go anywhere without her. And so they would pack us all in his car and take us to the Bucket of Blood, the dance hall in Point Alexander.
It was called the Bucket of
It was
Blood.
called, yeah, because there was always a fight.
Oh, okay.
Bucket of Blood. In fact, my husband was one of the ones that caused a lot of the bleeding. Anybody danced with me got a hiding. Just don't tell anybody that. Yeah. It was great fun now.
It sounds as though that during this time that there were all sorts of ways that you got to be social with one another and
Yes.
spend time together.
Yeah, well, like, you know, as far as the parties at the river, I can't remember them ever being, you know, other than the kids getting together and playing. Maybe there was a church social that they went to, because I can remember Daddy playing at the church social.
Right.
And don't remember, I just remember them talking about it, you know.
And speaking of church and religion, do you remember going to church, or was there any other kinds of spirituality that was practiced?
I can't remember walking to church from here, but my dad sang in the choir. I can't remember going to church from the river, but once we moved up there, we had to walk down to church every Sunday. And boy, could Daddy walk. Try and keep up with him on the Welly Road.
It sounds like you have a very musical family then as well.
Well, yeah, only thing I could do was sing a little. Me and my sister played the organ in the church, in the old church. She played the piano, so she ended up playing the organ. And Daddy sang in the choir in the old church until Deep River came and they got the socialites into the choir. And Daddy would drown them out, so he was asked to quit, to not sing in the choir because nobody else could hear the others. So he came down from the choir and didn't sing anymore. He just sat with the rest of the people he had a booming voice, so they said they had to raise the roof off of the church. But it was Latin. Then the masses were Latin, so he knew the Latin words too.
Wow.
Well, I sang in the choir too, and I answered the mass was high mass. He said in Latin, but now I've forgotten it all. But it was, yes, there was. Well, Daddy went to church because he had to sing in the choir, and Mom had always had 3 babies, so she kind of stayed at home and got the dinner ready, I guess.
So singing was one of the reasons why your father became part of the church, through singing.
Well, yes, I guess so. Well, I loved the Mass in Latin. A few years ago, my daughter took me to, what's that big church in England?
Ooh, you're going to get me on this
In
one.
England.
Westminster?
Westminster?
No. But anyways, we walked in the gargoyles around the church. We walked around the church, and then we were allowed to go in, And just as we were going in, they were singing the benediction, and I bawled. I just got down on my knees and I bawled because it was all the Latin. I knew all the words. I could sing with it. You know, it was
And it
beautiful.
all came back.
It was just. Laura looked at me and she said, "Mom." I said, "Yes, I know the benediction song, hymns." So that was it. Cried again.
I'm wondering about shopping back then. I know you mentioned you had a garden and you grew a lot of your food.
Well, there was this, it was either Howard's or Condover, had a car. And now this is only stories I heard, that they brought the meat and the bread, or meat and flour and stuff, from their store in Chalk. It was stored, and they brought it to the people here. And Mom would go to the car and pick out what she needed. And I can remember one time, of course, Mom didn't know really good English, so she went to Mr. Condover, and he had a peg leg, he had a wooden leg. So anyways, she said, "Oh, lock your ears." She said, she wanted a soup bone, and she didn't know how to ask for it, so she just went to Mr. Condover and said, "Mr. Condover, would you have a bone on for Dad's best friend, Bob Brindle. I thought he was going to die every time he talked about it. Your poor mother. And he said, "No, Alexina, no. A soup bone. It's a soup bone you want." So poor Mom got her soup bone, much to Bob's dismay. Oh my goodness, yeah. Brindles. There was Maxime Lemure, I don't remember him. He was dead before I was born. And I think they had to, and his wife too. I think his wife's name was Jenny. Jenny, I think. But they died of TB. And it seems to me that I heard that they had to burn their little house down so that this TB would not spread or something. Now, I don't know if I remember that from some time or if I thought it. But I can never know where he lived. He just lived this way from us. We were here and he was that way. It was Maxime, then Dad, my dad and Mom, and then Grandpa and Granny. And then I think Uncle Joe and Aunt Vic, and then Uncle Dave and Aunt Mary, and then there was the Brindles, and there was a name. Little house going now. I think the little house is, or the past where the boats launch. There's a little trail going that way. That's where the Brindles lived. Bob and Barney. And I don't know if they married, if one of them married. Bob was never married, but I think Barney might have married one of Daddy's sisters. I don't know. I can't remember. I just remember Barney and Bob.
So many families in that area.
I only remember Dad and Mom. Dad and Sis are the only ones that from Daddy's family. But then there was, I think Uncle Maxime had kids that were named Richie and Julia. And I can remember them coming up and visiting us. She couldn't speak or hear. And Richie was with her, but she was sign. They must have taken her away and taught her, because she could sign speak, you know. And well, then there was Aunt Vic. They had Nancy and Gibby and Eddie, Edith, Pauline. I think Aunt Vic and Uncle Joe had 10 children.
Wow.
With that little crippled hand. And then Uncle Dave, which isn't my uncle, but we called him with due respect because we were the only ones that called Dave. So we called him Uncle Dave out of respect. They had a bunch of family. They had a bunch of kids too. George and Jimmy and Bernice and Beatrice. Beatrice, Bernice, Virginia. Beatrice, Bernice, Virginia, George, Jimmy, Henry, Teresa. I'm going to miss somebody, Bobby and Mary. I'm missing somebody, but I think they had 10. Big family too. And Uncle Henry was in the army. He was, he's not my uncle, just my cousin. He was in the army, but he bought, when they were put out of here, he bought the farm up on the Wiley for Uncle Dave and his family. And he had a house just below, just off Highway 17. He bought his house.
So thinking of that time with those families at the Wiley Hamlet, do you remember how it was heard that you were going to be getting forced off of the land?
How? I can't remember that. All I can remember was that there was a lot of tears shed. Mom was always sad. And I can't remember. I really can't remember anybody leaving the river. You know, if they, I know.
How old were you?
I think Uncle Joe lived at the corner just off Highway 17 in a little log house. Now whether they brought those logs from the river back there and built that little house, I can't remember that.
Okay.
Now that was Uncle Joe. Now Uncle Henry bought that house up a little further for him and Grandma. We called her Grandma, but she was my aunt. And Grandma, he took care of Grandma, and they had a housekeeper taking care of Grandma. And then there was us up the Wiley, Sis, and Sis, and there was a relative. He was a nomad. I mean, he trapped, so he just came home when he couldn't trap anymore. Uncle Dave Peel, that's his name, Uncle Dave Peel. Him and Sis got that little house, and that's where we lived with them until we got our house built where it is now.
Okay.
Oh, and I guess Uncle Dave moved up to the farm.
One thing I'm curious about during these moves, when everyone was getting situated at their new homestead, do you remember any reactions to the news or how people might have felt at the time to having to move?
Well, we were happy. We thought it was exciting, you know.
When you're a child, so much is very exciting.
Because I was 6.
6 years old.
When we had to move out, so it was quite exciting. But there was Dad and Mom and the 3 kids in with Aunt Sis in that little house up there. So Dad and Sis would be talking Indian a lot, and some of it was cranky words, I think. But anyways.
Maybe trying to have their own private conversation.
Yes. I think it was always somebody around. You know, so.
Do you remember? It would be hard at age 6, but I wonder if you had remembered or heard any stories of what kind of compensation was received for being moved from the land.
Well, I don't know how much the other people got for moving, but all I know is Daddy got $75.
$75
for that property.
Okay.
To move, and of course he had to take the house with him. Otherwise, they were going to burn it or bulldoze it.
Okay.
So.
Do you know if at that time, or have you heard stories since, if that compensation felt fair? Was that to be a lot of money at the time?
Well, I have no idea. All I know is the other people, they got a lot more than that, I think.
Okay, so it differed.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, but I can't remember because nobody would say. And Uncle Henry didn't have a house, so he bought this. He was in the army, so he bought that house for Uncle Dave. And I don't know what they sold there. Well, their little house is still up, Uncle Dave Adams. He's my cousin, actually. But we call him Uncle Dave. The little one by the yacht club?
Right, yes.
That was Uncle Dave's house.
Yes.
And with all his children. Bunch of children, yeah. That was Uncle Dave.
Do you remember when you moved, did all of your, you said your mom had cows, the cows came with you?
Well, I can't remember if Mom and Dad had to walk the cows from here to the property, because how else would they get there? You know, the truck that Mr. Rathwell had was just kind of like a half-ton, as far as my knowledge goes, like, you know, what I can remember. And they would I don't know how he even brought those logs up. If they had to cut them in half or what, but they brought the logs up to build the stable for the cows. They must have walked the cows.
It's quite a big move, much different than moving these days.
Yes, well, I think Mom and Dad were the only ones with animals that had to be moved. Like, you know, whether, like, maybe when Uncle Henry's kids or Uncle Dave's kids helped walk the cows home. I don't know. I was 6. All I know is the cows had a barn to live in.
And when you got to your new home and you set up with your family, did anything feel different at that time? I know that there was a lot happening here in what we now call the town of Deep River. Do you have any memories from that time of the change that was occurring?
Well, I can remember when a hurricane struck, and I can remember Dad and Mom outside putting logs up against the side of the house so that it wouldn't blow over. Now, Hurricane Hazel, was that the very first hurricane that struck here? Do you remember?
I'm not sure.
I think it was Hurricane Hazel was her name. But I can remember them up there we had to get downstairs. Don't be upstairs. You get to sleep downstairs on the floor. And I can't remember them. I can remember them out there with the plank this way, and then each of them had a big pole holding the roof.
Holding the house.
You know, propping it up so that it wind wouldn't blow it down. And it didn't. And poor Aunt Sis had to crawl out of her window up on top of the hill from where we lived and come down to our place because a tree had fallen across her step and she couldn't get out. And she was a big lady. And I don't know how she did it, but she did it. God rest her soul. And what else would be exciting? Well, we had the pasture to play baseball in.
Okay, baseball.
Well, I don't know where we got the balls, but there was one kid we didn't like, and the cow patties ended up to be first, second, and third. So guess what happened? That kid had to slide into second.
That's very creative.
And then he had to go home. But anyways, that's all right. That's just my story. I think there's only me and Henry that knows it.
We'll have to bring that up at a storytelling circle.
I wonder if Henry would remember that. I know, I'll never forget it. Because it was such a mean thing to do. Well, we didn't hurt him any. We didn't hurt him, maybe just his pride a little, but how are we supposed to know that he would be so slippy? Well, it was fun anyways. But anyways, we played ball. And there was one time we were playing ball just in a little thing beside the house, and the ball. Daddy was in his rocking chair. I don't know if he was listening to a radio, I guess. And the ball came and hit the window right where the wood hits the... Oh my God. Of course, Dad was a very nervous person. He come tearing out of the house and down the veranda. You kids get out of here, don't play here, go play in the pasture. So that's where we played. Of course, we chuckled and giggled all the way because I could just picture Daddy. Oh.
It sounds like some things haven't changed then.
Oh, it was. And the stories that Daddy used to get, get on the bus, have to walk down, get on the bus to go to work. Oh, they give Daddy a job at AECL once they took his land. He was janitor.
Invited to work.
He was a janitor. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
and what was that like for him at that time?
Yeah. Anyways, he'd catch the bus. But anyways, he'd handing his ticket to the bus driver and somebody would poke him. And he'd say, punch it! And so the bus driver said, anybody does that again to Moses is going to get off of this bus and walk to work. Nope, they never poked Daddy again. He was a very nervous man.
So with your dad getting a job at AECL, during this time there were a lot of families moving here to work at AECL, and then your family was moving away from where you had grown up. Can you tell me about the relationship between the original families at the Wiley Hamlet and the families that were coming in to work at AECL?
Well, the kids could be very cruel, children. We were the kids from the ghetto, from the Deep River ghetto.
That was a word that was used during that time?
To me, anyways, and I thought, I'm just as good as you are. I mean, my skin mightn't be the same color, but I'm native, But I got to, it was done, you just had to put up with it. And if they were rude to you, well, then you just took it. Made you a stronger person, I think. I get along with everybody now. Mostly Deep River's my friends. My God, I'm 84. How many of them is left? I must be the only one. God almighty.
Well, I'm so thankful for you sharing these stories with us.
Oh, there's lots I'm forgetting. There's just, some of it sad, some of it glad, some of it happy. And, it's just so much.
I have a question for you. We're sitting here today and you're getting to look out over at the water and the Laurentian Mountains where you grew up. I'm wondering, when you look at this now, what are the feelings that come up or the thoughts you may have?
Mad. I get mad and very sad. I think that I was born there. Most of it's mine. It all belongs to me, because I'm the last one left, last Lemure. And I just get so angry that they could do that to people. Oh, what they wanted to do was to send Mom and Dad and his family to an Indian reserve. Mom said no. Dad said no. So that's when she sold her calves and bought 3 acres of land on the Wiley Road.
So 1 calf for 3 acres of land. For your
Well, I
new
don't
home.
know. Like, there was that one calf that she was wanting to sell to buy her land back. There was that one, but then I don't know how many more she had to sell for the 3 acres. Mr. Greenwood, I have no idea how much she paid for the 3 acres. But it had to be a lot. But God, I can't even remember if Dad had to be working. No, I don't even know if Dad was working then. Maybe all he was doing was guiding. I can remember a bunch of American men coming and Daddy taking off into the bush with them. And I thought, no, they'd be gone for days. Nope, an hour and a half, they'd be coming back with their 4-pronged, 5-pronged deer. Dad was a good tracker, good leader. What did I say, trapper? No, guide.
Guide. A good guide.
Yes, they would hire him.
He knew the area well and
yeah,
was able to show them.
Mountains and this, and all this area this was all bush, I guess, must have been.
If you were to picture yourself now, after some generations of time, being a sort of guide as well for the generations that are to come next, Is there anything that you would say? Do you have a message for next generations to share?
I wouldn't want to tell them how I feel. I wouldn't want them to feel like I feel. I would just tell them, look at it and love it and enjoy it. Because this is where I was born. You know, it's just, and it is beautiful. You come and sit there and look at, only most of the trees are gone, but God. I'm afraid I'm not a very good speaker.
No, this was very wonderful, Clara.
There's just too much hurt and hate.
We are so appreciative of you sharing your stories with us.
Well, I just wish I could have been more better ones, you know, happier ones. But we're happy up there, you know, Mom. We still went berry picking. We'd hitch a ride. There was a pig farm up in Wally Bronson that we would go there, hitch a ride to the dump truck. They used to bring the pigs food, hitch for a ride up there with a tub. We'd pick blueberries around those rocks and oh my God, tubs and tubs of blueberries. And then hitch a ride and come home again. She'd pack a lunch. Jeez, my mother and her berries. Come on, we gotta go. And my straw hat, I think I burnt it.
In the sun?
Well, the sun couldn't be on your, sunstroke.
Yeah.
So straw hat, you're picking strawberries and then raspberries and then blueberries. Blackberries, not so much. Blackberries we picked for fun. You pick them and you eat them. But we always had jam.
Always jam.
Always had jam and preserves. You know, we weren't rich, but we weren't poor because we had cows for milk and butter and we had pigs for pork and she would have to slaughter a calf for beef. But, you know, it was just, that was sad. We'd hide under the bed on that day. But we didn't have money-wise, but we were, and garden, God, a garden, we had bust our butts taking care of the garden just to make sure we'd have potatoes and turnips and carrots in the winter.
For the winter.
You know, it was,
to stock up.
Yeah, it was a lot of work, but it was fun too. I learned a lot. You learn a lot of stuff when you have to do stuff to survive. You know, it's a lot of these people now, kids nowadays wouldn't know what to do or how to do it. You know,
it shows how important it is to pass those skills onward to the next generation to come.
Well, all my kids know gardening. They all have little gardens. Lorelei and Angie. Neil had a bigger garden, but he's not well, so. Cindy has a garden. Yes, it is a very beautiful spot.
Thank you, Clara, for sharing these stories with us. I'm wondering if you have any last words.
Last words.
Maybe a seed to plant in that metaphorical garden.
I would say, come and sit at that rock, but that rock isn't the place it should be. It's not my rock. You know, it belongs to the town. I would just sit on the bank. I'd go down over there and look at, or dangle your feet in the water or something. You know, it's just, I don't know what, I really honest to God don't know what to say.
And that's okay too.